that was introduced to help fill some of the expenditure holes might not be the most popular tax, but I entreat all of you to bear with us. The COVID Trust Fund has performed an invaluable service, and with these developments has reached the end of its mandate. I owe to you, my compatriots, and to myself, to go to any length to bring the economy to the rude health it was in before the onset of the pandemic. When things came to the state, where I concluded we had to go to the International Monetary Fund to access a facility for budgetary support, I gave a directive to the Minister of Finance to start the process. It was a painful decision for me to take, because going to the IMF was not part of the economic transformation agenda I'd been pursuing, especially as my government had gone the extra mile to bring to a successful end the IMF program we inherited from the previous government. But who would have imagined that President Akufo Addo would order the closure of airports, offices, factories, or schools? We were in extraordinary times, and we took extraordinary measures. And when faced with the realities of the economic crisis last year, I accepted the challenge that the economy required a similar attitude, including the sacrifices many of us have made in recent times. Luckily, the International Monetary Fund has been most supportive, and we have ended up with having our program approved in record time, culminating in the formal approval by the IMF board on 17th May. As I'm sure we have all heard by now, the details of the program have been explained by officials of the fund and by our Minister for Finance and the Governor of the Bank of Ghana. The first tranche of $600 million United States dollars has been credited to our national account out of the $3 billion United States dollars that we have negotiated to receive within a period of 36 months. Fellow Ghanaians, access to the IMF facility will not spell the immediate end of the difficulties we are in presently. But the fact that we've been able to negotiate such a deal sends a positive message to our trading partners, creditors, and investors. A positive message that will be underpinned by the discipline, hard work, and enterprise with which we execute the program. It should lead to the restoration of confidence and the reopening of avenues that have been closed to us this past year and a half. It should also lead to the resumption of many of the infrastructural projects that have stalled.
All right, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to the program. It's Good Afternoon, Ghana. And just gone by is a president who, had, like he said, possibly the last address on COVID-19 to be specific to fellow Ghanaians. And a few things were said there, just so to remind you, that's why we play those videos. This afternoon we'll be discussing this with Victor Kuto, who is a lawyer and also a member of the NDC legal team and National Executive Committee member as well. And also Kofi Tonto is also a member of the NPP and he speaks for the party in terms of the communications team member as well. So Kofi, you're welcome. And Victor as well, you're welcome. Right, so let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get to the guests and start analyzing some of the issues. It moved from COVID to IMF. Welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. So I am with one Victor Kuto Esquire and a member of the NDC legal team and also National Executive Committee member as well. Victor, you're welcome once again. And also Kofi Tonto, also welcome from the NPP side. I hope both of you actually was able to go through, or either of you was able to go through with the president when he did the address, right? Or I should read something small to remind you. Oh, your mic is off. Great.
Okay, so I'm saying that I couldn't watch the speech. I'm actually pursuing my
In which area?
master's in leadership and global management. So I'm just about done. I have a few courses to finish. So on weekends, that's what I do. Yeah, so I couldn't watch the speech. But this morning, I've been reading the transcript.
Okay.
I'm still going through the transcript. I've read
I've gone
parts of
through
it,
that
yeah.
even on Good Morning and a few ones. But
Yeah.
let me just, for the purposes of Good Afternoon Ghana, maybe some of you have still not been able to go through. So let me just give
Yeah,
a
sure.
few
That would be
tips.
helpful. Yeah.
So there's this point that says that President keeps COVID-19 levy despite calls for removal. The government still wants to raise more revenue through the COVID-19 health recovery levy despite the end of the pandemic in the country. Now, this may come as a disappointment to both consumers and business community who have been pushing for the removal of the tax. Those of which they say it's contributed to the rising cost of products and services. For instance, the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana has said the government must do all it can to cushion the business community. Now, it goes on to say, quote, the COVID health recovery levy that was introduced to help fill some of the expenditure holes might not be the most popular tax, but I entreat all of you to bear with us, the president said in his address on Sunday. The COVID-19 health recovery levy is a stand-alone levy applied to the gross value of taxable supplies of goods and services provided under the standard rate and VAT flat rate schemes. Quote, let me make it clear that COVID-19 expenditures, especially unplanned, have been subject to my instigation to audit by the Auditor General and are going through parliamentary process. And we all deserve to be assured that the crisis was not used to cover for corrupt practices, unquote, the president noted. Okay. So that is maybe just a bit, but also the president reiterating the fact that COVID-19 as an emergency or as a global pandemic has actually been maybe removed as a pandemic. It's now handled as any other normal disease. So all the emergencies that we've been going through, the testing, coming into the country, I don't know if showing off your card. When I travel outside the country, they say show your card. That annoys me a lot, but I think all of that has now been removed. On the international front, I know a lot of countries are fighting governments, especially in the US, over, COVID vaccines that allegedly are killing people and all that. But that's maybe in their country. We're yet to record a few of those ones. Maybe in Ghana, if we do, we'll let you know. And also, running to the IMF bailout was a painful decision. And Addo, the president, Akufo Addo, also has once again justified the decision to run to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, for bailout, saying that it was a painful decision but necessary. Now, in a speech to the nation on Sunday, President Akufo Addo said that the decision was made after careful consideration of all options. Take note, all options. He said that the IMF deal was necessary to help Ghana's economy recover from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. It was a painful decision, quote, for me to take because going to the IMF was not part of the economic transformation agenda, and I had been pursuing, especially as my government had gone the extra mile to bring a successful end. The IMF program we inherited from the previous governments, unquote. The IMF deal is expected to provide Ghana with a $3 billion. Of course, that's what we all know now, but it's going to be spread over a period of 36 months, right? All right. So I think those are the major highlights of what we expected to do. He said that we shouldn't expect that the IMF is going to close our economic woes anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's start off with the levy.
Yeah, definitely.
So how is it going to be possible? Because if you read the IMF conditionalities, in fact, the subsequent, you realize that the IMF is expecting government to impose more taxes. We've already started seeing signs of utility bills, coming up. Also government going after those who are not paying, and all kinds of measures are taking place. We have employment situation that's going to, now come to a total halt and all that. How is it going to be possible for government to run the economy and make people understand that, yeah, I know that you're calling for the removal of more taxes, but in fact, we're going to impose more?
Well, thank you very much. And I like your top. It's a very nice talk.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And then a very good afternoon to my brother. I've never met him.
Okay.
I've only seen pictures of him when he was there. Was it student lawyer, something? I forgot the title.
Yeah.
And he really enjoyed the post.
Yeah. He was a leader.
A leader, yeah. Was it law school or something?
SRC president.
SRC president of Ghana Law School. He made it very interesting. I was watching from behind, and he made it quite lively, I should put it. And so nice meeting you. Okay. But anyways, as I said, I couldn't watch the speech. But this morning I had to go on TV, and then after TV, I've been reading through the transcript. So it looks like the president talked about, COVID, and then also segued into the IMF. With COVID, he spoke. He just pretty much gave us a summary of what transpired, the numbers, the data, and then talked about the lessons we've learned and some of the things we've been able to do. For example, being able to set up the National Vaccine Institute. We've been able to set up 2 vaccine manufacturing plants. He spoke about all these things as things that we have to put in place to ensure that in the future, if in the unfortunate instance anything were to occur, we'll be able to avert some of the challenges that occurred when COVID came about. And then he proceeded to talk about the IMF and all of that. But coming back to the question you asked, as it relates to the IMF, when you go to the IMF, in our instance, we went to the IMF for balance of payment support. So the IMF is not a one-stop shop for everything. Usually what happens is once they give you the balance of payment support, there are other financial opportunities that open up for you to leverage or take advantage of. But one of the aspects of the IMF isn't necessarily to impose tax. But what the IMF says is that what are the things that you can do internally to mobilize more revenue. So it could include increasing tax. It could include paying what typically people should have paid. Now, I'll give you an example. So when it comes to electricity, it's been argued that the amount we pay per kilowatt is not per international standard, and that Ghanaians have been paying lower than what they are supposed to pay. And it's been a debate for a very long time. I remember 2015, I went to a conference at Harvard, and this conversation came up. So it's not a new conversation that Ghana always pay below, the consumers always pay below what they are supposed to pay. Now, when you go to the IMF to seek the support, they will tell you that, look, there are options or there are ways for you to mobilize resources domestically. So go back and mobilize resources domestically. It could be imposing tax. It could be getting people to pay what they are supposed to pay. It could be plugging holes. So if you read the IMF report, they talk about things the government has to do to plug some of the leakages in the system to ensure that you don't lose the money that you are typically losing. It cites several examples. And then it even insists on GRE as a condition post-precedent, because it's not condition pre-precedent. So post getting the IMF deal, you are still supposed to do these things to get the remaining balance.
Do I get a sense that before even the discussion on IMF went haywire, the government had already started the condition post precedents, implementations, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, because you see, before we went to the IMF,
especially in reference to VRA.
of course, because you can argue.
The GRA.
Yeah, you can argue so because before we went to the IMF, as the president rightfully said, we were looking at every avenue to avert the decision of going to the IMF, and that meant looking for ways to raise money domestically,
including e-levy.
That came about the e-levy, and so the government will certainly look at where can we go within the system to raise money, where are we shorting on money. So if it meant that there were instances where we could go to raise money, we will. And now, and if I will address your mind to this, if you recall, before we went to the IMF, government what's the right word to aggravated its tax collection exercise. Do you remember? Before IMF, you remember GRA was all over.
I think it's actually crossed its revenue generation target.
Exactly.
It's exceeded.
Was all over, trying to make sure it raises as much money as possible. These were all things we were doing to ensure that we raise enough money domestically. So the IMF is simply confirming some of the efforts that we had started already. But of course, they will also highlight some other places that we can do better. And I think these are some of the instances that
that means that the government was not being straightforward with the people.
In what
because
case?
There were possibilities that were pointing to the side or the part that we're likely to go to the IMF, considering our revenue position in the country. But anytime we made that effort, the government made it look like it was highly impossible. But there were possibilities, at least some percentages, which you were considering, which is why you were dealing with this post-precedent conditions of the IMF.
Well, I get what you're saying.
You get it?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because we project.
Because there were vulnerabilities, revenue vulnerabilities, then the intent or the possibility of going to the IMF existed. Well, anyone could argue that. But the government insisted because we felt that we could rely on some of the internally resources. For example, that's why we went very strong on the e-levy. We felt that we could raise funds from the e-levy. Remember, the 3 billion the IMF is giving us, as an example, is not coming in one tranche. It's coming in 7 tranches in 3 years. So if you could raise 4 or 6 billion Ghana cedis from e-levy, as an example, then you may not necessarily need to go and raise that revenue from the IMF. Because IMF is giving us $600 million now, and then $600 million close to the end of the year. That's about 1.2 billion. So if we could raise, and remember at that time, the cedi wasn't performing as it is now. So you could have raised some good money at that time, but we couldn't. So the government was assured that if these domestic structures that we've put in place work, if these things go through, then we wouldn't have a need to go to the IMF. Unfortunately, they didn't go through. And that's why it became necessary for us to go to the IMF. Yeah.
Let me have Victor come in. Yeah.
Yes.
Victor, what did you actually make? What did you make of the indication that a levy like the COVID levy was still going to, be collected, or citizens were going to continue paying? I'm particularly the person that doesn't keep receipts when I buy from a shop. But that levy alone, sometimes it just makes me pile receipts, and then I calculate at the end of the week how much I've paid, as far as that levy is particularly concerned. How did you take that when the president made that indication?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me also use the opportunity to say good afternoon.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, it's on. Okay. Yeah, good afternoon to our viewers, yourself and my brother Kofi. Friday's bonds, they are very hard people. So, and I want to thank him for his kind words also.
I tap into that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Friday
bonds.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see. They are very hard people. Anyway, so on the COVID-19 levy, I'm not too surprised. If you look at what's gone on with the e-levy, COVID-19, I'm not surprised at all. I'll tell you why. But first and foremost, if you look at Article 174 of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, clearly every taxation goes through Parliament.
Yeah.
You need approval of Parliament. And one of the reasons why you have such provisions is for Parliament to deliberate on the purpose of the tax, the essence. So if the essence of COVID-19, as we were told, was to help us recover from the pandemic, you understand? And by and large, COVID-19 is a thing of the past. So for you to insist that we should continue paying the tax, it's quite worrying. You understand? I think Parliament will have to look at this, and this is the time that we should benefit from the hung Parliament. We have a Parliament which is not too partisan. This is the time that Parliament should discuss this COVID-19 levy and see whether or not there's a need for us to continue
if
paying.
legally it's even right.
Yes.
Because they aided the passage of the levy.
Exactly. Government cannot on its own impose tax on the people of Ghana. We need the Parliament of Ghana to make such crucial approval. But I was saying that I wasn't surprised because of the e-levy. You recall that when the issue of e-levy came on board, the argument was that, look, once e-levy is passed, we are not going to IMF. Mm-hmm. That was the narrative by the government. People like my senior brother Kofi, that was the narrative, that we don't even need to go to IMF. Once e-levy is passed, that's it. There's no problem and all of that. E-levy has been passed.
It just kind of makes me think, and maybe later Kofi can respond to that. The government is not being either they've not been honest with projections, or they have not been able to project effectively and correctly.
We will come to that when we are moving to the IMF. But I just want to establish a point that even after they later rushed to IMF, they could not even eat the humble pie and say, look, then let's do away with the e-levy. Because we're already with IMF. Because the condition for which they send or the force for e-levy to be passed was that we don't need to go to IMF. So once you make a U-turn, and it's instructive that the time that the government said they did not need IMF and that e-levy should be passed, the opposition NDC and well-meaning Ghanaians advised, look, if you look at how indisciplined you have been, you better go to IMF to correct certain economic issues. But they claim that, no, we don't need IMF. In fact, the last time Ghana came out from IMF, there was a Kenke party at the Ministry of Finance. It's instructive to note all of this. So after they made a U-turn and went to IMF, they could not eat the humble pie and withdraw the e-levy. To date, we are still paying the e-levy. It is within the same vein that they are maintaining the COVID-19 levy. Look at May 25th report, daily guide, page 6. Look at it. The president was quoted to say that this time around, there will be discipline in the management of the IMF money. Is there page 6 on Thursday, daily guide? Daily guide is a well-known MPP paper. We all know this. That the president is quoted to have said that, like, look, this time around, there will be discipline with the use of IMF money. It means they've been indisciplined. They've been indisciplined. Look, all the COVID-19...
I'm not sure the government side will interpret that
no.
statement to mean that they've been indisciplined.
I will prove to you. I'll give you facts. This is not the first time the president is addressing the people of this country. The last time he addressed... In fact, 88 hospitals. We were promised 88 hospitals from this same COVID-19, that there'll be 88 hospitals. And I don't know whether you remember this. 88 hospitals.
Yeah.
As we speak now, not even one. Yes.
We promised it out of the COVID fund.
No,
the COVID levy.
I'm talking about updates by the president during all this.
Okay.
Yeah, this was one of these updates.
That's right. He said that.
Yes.
But I'm saying that, are you saying that he said we are going to use the COVID levy to pay for it?
Not too sure about that. But,
Okay.
But in terms of his COVID-19 updates...
No, the government didn't say it was using COVID
He
funds.
said
Yes.
that. He said he was going to build those hospitals. Yeah.
That's right. Now, another indicator we should look at is the audit reports. If we don't want to go partisan and want to be very objective, we need to look at the audit report on the COVID expenditure. That will give us an idea as to how disciplined this government have been. But what is the judgment? Even on this table, what is the judgment we can make on how government has spent the COVID-19 funds from the audit reports? It's terrible. If you look at the audit report, monies were given to chiefs. I'm not saying that chiefs do not deserve money. But if you look at the commentary from the audit reports, they should tell you how indisciplined the NPP government have been. And for me, I can understand the president. He said, look, we should bear with them. Fair enough. If it is a plea that Ghanaians should bear with the government because things are difficult, it's a good step. That the president has now come into the realization that things are hard, we should bear with them. But what is the government also doing to cut down the size of government? You see, you cannot be asking us to bear with you when You are not making steps, reasonable
Bearing
steps.
with yourself.
Exactly. Thank you. And you see, look at the size of government.
What's
But
the size?
I
What's the
must-
size of
I must
government?
also acknowledge the fact that since they started the second term, they've kind of reduced the ministerial appointments. I must acknowledge that, because if you look at the first term, they have deputy ministers even for the various regions and all of that. There's been some kind of reduction and all that, but it's still not enough because of the Article 71 holders, the ex gratia and all of that. I was so pleased when President Mahama said that, look, in this next government, there will even be no ex gratia and all of that.
But
That is where we've
when
been
it
as a
comes
country.
to ex gratia, which is taking a lot or putting pressure on us, the government is much ado about nothing. Because it's legal, you're a lawyer.
Yes, the president, I think the former president is said clearly that there will even be undertaking. You understand? To the extent that even while the constitution is being amended and all of that, persons to be appointed will sign undertaking and all of that. But even away from that, to prove to you how indisciplined the government have been. But for the energy minister, and I said, look, we need to give him some credit. But for the energy minister, Kofi, Ghana's stake, 50% in the Jubilee Food, will have been sold to Petro South Africa. 50% stake. And for me, I think that I need to salute the energy minister for intervening. And if you look at the persons at play, that should tell that we cannot say this as civil servant. The board chair is a former national chairman of the MPP. The board chair. And these are the kind of people we are dealing with. They want to sell everything that we have as a nation. Why? One person. And for the minister, if you look at the tonation of the letter, he was right under protest. It means that they might have had some discussion behind the scenes and it was not working because they're all in the same party. The minister is a senior member of the MPP and you have a former chairman. For the minister to reduce his opinion in writing to the board chair, that should tell you that things is gone bad. Why the rush? So you are going for an IMF deal. We are expecting huge sums of money only for an agency under the same government ready to sell out Ghana's stake in the Jubilee Food to Petro South Africa. And I know Kofi will not even agree to this. Kofi will not support this. Because at least we must protect certain interests. And I'm happy he's a very soon we'll be calling him leadership expert and all of that. He's doing his masters and all of that. You see? So we need to take note that our interests must be protected as a nation. Look, before they took over power, with all the noise that they made, that President Mahama was incompetent, we handed over, at the time we were leaving power, the debt to GDP was 56%. But as we speak now, the debt to GDP is over 100%. As we speak now, these are facts from the same IMF. Look, in fact, the IMF report, before they released the money, they said the free SHS, which is your flagship program, has been poorly implemented and targeted.
It said targeted.
Thank you.
Targeted,
Thank you.
not implemented.
Thank you. It said the free SHS has been poorly targeted.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that it is not the NDC saying.
So it says that,
Right.
it says that
Right.
Ghana spends close to 4% of GDP on education with good results in terms of enrollment, but poor learning outcomes. The flagship program, Free SHS High School, Free Senior High School, which covers a full cost of secondary education, has helped increase enrollment, but is poorly targeted. And the key identified areas of teacher training and strong performance based. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. And you see, you made a point which is very crucial. You said, as a result of this IMF deal, it's possible there will be hot in employment. You recall you made that statement when we started this program. Just suppose that
There is.
Thank you.
Now we cannot employ
Right.
in the public sector.
Now, take note of all the strike going on. As we speak now, members of the judicial service, they're on strike. And the consequences.
Why are they on strike?
Allowances. This last week, GBC workers, the state broadcasters, they were complaining. In fact, even after they've agreed, if you look at the collective agreement signed.
But on the side of the GBC, the issue was that, I think we were doing the proper receiving of allowances.
Yes.
and we're told that fair wages and salaries were saying that some of the workers were receiving wages that they are not entitled to.
Yeah.
So I would rather say that maybe for so many years we have ignored all these irregularities, and for the coming of the IMF, we now have to run after those who are taking illegal monies, and it's creating a problem, because a problem for someone to be taking some monies for so many years and all of a sudden you come and say it's not right. Is it my fault that you are paying me this money?
Thankfully, I have little facts with regards to the GBC workers. I saw the collective agreement and all of that. The fact are that the current system that they operate was negotiated in 2006. They started implementation with the single spine in 2009. Now, from 2017, the base rate has always increased. From the current government increased their base rate, but the allowance remained from the 2017 as it was.
The same.
Yes, the same.
But are they entitled to that allowance?
Yes.
That wouldn't have anything to do with IMF.
No, I'm just making the point. This employment strike and all of those things, because she had raised that some workers were not paid. Just recently, when the validation came from controller, they noticed that about 3 or 4 workers were taking domestic help allowance, which they were not.
What's that? Domestic
help allowance. Yes.
Help allowance.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That allowance, I've read the facts a bit. That allowance is for senior managers.
Okay.
But some cleaners took those allowances. But you do not collapse the entire system because of 2 or 3 workers that took allowance that were not due them. As we speak now, all the senior management workers, the general workers, are taking only radiation allowance. Radiation allowance. And all the other allowances have not been paid. After both parties, the GBC workers acting through the Public Service Workers Union versus the government of Ghana acting through the Fair Wages Commission. So far, they've paid only the radiation allowance. It's worrying. If you look, just last week, 18% water bill is gone high by 18%. Electricity bill, fuel.
So does that the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission wants to take the radiation allowance off?
No, they are paying only radiation allowance as we speak. And these people have been living on 2017 allowances, but things keep going up. Their purchasing power has reduced. And I'm saying that I don't want to limit it to just GBC workers. Look at judicial service. Today, as we speak, bailiffs, they're on strike. So if you want to serve processes, you couldn't go to court today. If you want to serve processes, there are no bailiffs. They're on strike. They will be delaying the justice sector. I'm sure very soon we'll be talking about citizenship and all of that, and all the cases in courts. And that's the country we are in now. Look, let me point out something to you recently. About 88 MPs under this current government had called for the dismissal of the finance minister for not managing the economy properly. 88 ministers have called for the dismissal of the finance minister. What are we saying? The man is still out post. So majority of the majority MPs are calling for the dismissal of their own finance minister. So it is no longer a partisan position. It's now like a national call for this government to sit up and do the right thing. Thank you.
Right.
I would like to react to a few things. So, for example, my brother, every year when you do the budget, you have your expenditure line and then your revenue line. So last year, for example, the expenditure line was about 137 billion Ghana cedis. The revised revenue line was about 99 billion Ghana cedis. Ab initio, we were in deficit of about 37 billion. And then we were shut down to the international capital market. So what it meant was that the 3 billion that typically we will go and get to support our budget wasn't coming in. So you were already neck deep 37 billion. Okay, so you needed to find ways to raise revenue, i.e. the e-levy or any other forms, or you heighten your revenue collection or any other ways you can raise money. That is why the e-levy, part of the e-levy came in. And then the COVID levy also came in based on the expenditure we made. Now, you are already neck deep. So it isn't like we had extra money and we had the e-levy, so IMF has come, so you should cancel e-levy. No, it doesn't work like that.
But the point is, in dealing with the economy, you really have to be straightforward with the people.
Yes.
There's been too many back and forth type of communication.
Okay.
So it makes it difficult for a people to go with you.
Okay.
When you even say, bear with us, like the president said yesterday, bear with us for us to keep, the COVID for a period of time, of which we don't even know.
Okay.
How long are we keeping this COVID levy for?
Okay.
The president has said that there's not going to be haircuts in the debt restructuring. Look at now. Now even pensioners are crying for their money.
We can go into some of these. No, I get your worries. We can go into some of these things, but I think this platform is a big platform. So sometimes we get the opportunity to also provide additional education for the viewers, and that's why I was trying to provide that additional education. That the e-levy still persists, not because the government has raised enough money from IMF. The money coming from IMF, my brother, is not enough. Even this year's budget is still at a deficit because what we are spending versus what we are making is not in tally. So always there is a deficit, and that's why we go to the capital market. We are still shut down from the capital market. The $600 million is just for balance of payment support. What it means is that the commitments that we have to make outside of Ghana, that we need Forex for. This is what the IMF is.
Why are we always in deficit?
It's always been deficit?
Why should it be a tradition that must be entertained and make it look like it's a culture and it's normal?
It's not. I wouldn't call it necessarily a tradition. So it's a case of statutory expenditure and then discretionary expenditure. So statutory expenditure are some of the things he was talking about. These are things by law.
Yes, but that's why I talked earlier on, spoke about projections.
Yeah.
When you know what your obligations are when it comes to statutory payments and discretionary expenditure, what do you do with these two?
Government has made effort on the discretionary expenditure.
What's the effort government
There was a 30% cut.
Because statutory is statutory. You can't do anything about it.
Of course.
And even statutory, you still put caps on them.
I know. I'm saying that the government has made efforts on the discretionary aspect. 30% cuts. But the bottom line is that the nation is the demand that we need versus the revenue we make. They just don't tally. And do you know that a kilometer of road, for example, is $2 million of asphalt road? $2 million US. A kilometer of standard gauge rail is $5 million. So when the
government know these things before
actually
threw in its promises of policies, did the government know?
Oh, but
all
every
these costs?
every government.
For example, we have planting for food and jobs. Now that policy is actually halted.
Halted?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not ongoing now. It's
no,
been
there's
halted.
a new one. There's a new one coming. The minister is going to update the nation very soon.
Okay, but
on
now
a new
it is
approach
not
a new approach for planting for food and jobs. Yeah.
So we're introducing a new approach.
A new approach. It's the same thing. A new approach
that we had.
Yeah.
What has been spent on planting for food and jobs?
Okay.
What has been the benefits of that particular policy? Okay. We need to review what we implemented.
Certainly.
So that the people will know what did we spend here and how has it been. Because you should be able to do your projections such that the implementation of policies you do should rake in
precisely.
Revenue.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that's why calling for some reviews are important. And when you implement any policy, at least reasonable stages of the policy, you need to review the policy to see if you are getting value for money, efficiency, efficacy, and all of that. It's important. So, for example, the free SHS review, nothing wrong with it because we've implemented it for how long? Almost 7 years. And to look at what are some lapses, what are some of the things we can do to revive it or to make it better, I should
Do you remember that the free SHS finance minister indicated from the beginning that let's do targeted free SHS?
Yeah, the finance minister made a statement. The statement he made was that left to him, we should do merit-based. But because of the conditions and the structure of our system, it's nearly impossible to do target-based.
Why?
Because how do you define who can afford and who can't afford?
Because you didn't engage stakeholders.
How? Which stakeholders were not engaged?
Parents.
I mean, we've been in this country for how long?
I know in my job, parents who were ready to pay for their children.
Of course. there are people who were ready to pay for their children. But that's why the finance minister said, yes, if he cited himself, you remember, he mentioned that there's no reason for him, as an example, to pay for free SHS. I mean, to not pay for free SHS. But the mechanism to ensure equitable implementation of the policy isn't there. So we targeted that as long as the person is a Ghanaian and that person is benefiting, it's better for the country in the long term.
So you went,
but as we put structures in place,
so you went all the way for 7 years, and here we are.
Yeah, but we have provided education.
You have now come back to
even read what you said. When you read what you said, it said that the free SHS has shown positive results, but it's poorly targeted. It says,
targeted social protection. Ghana spent close to 4% of GDP on education, with good results in terms. Hold on.
In terms of
enrollment. You don't clap for yourself for increase in enrollment.
Why shouldn't you clap for yourself?
Hold on, let me finish reading so that we pick it one after the other. So, enrollment by poor learning outcomes. So you clap for yourself for enrollment with poor learning outcomes, and you want to congratulate yourself for that.
Let me.
And it goes on to say, the flagship program Free SHS, which covers the full cost of secondary education, has helped increase enrollment, but it's poorly targeted. Key identified areas of potential improvement of the education spending include strengthening primary education resources, better teacher training, and stronger performance-based funding practices. And I remember when we were all involved in the free SHS education, there was Dr. Ndum, there was President Mahama, there was Nana Addo. Dr. Ndum said, I want to do progressive free, but starting from the basic. Mahama said, same, I want to do progressively free. He might have his own definition, and that was what he was saying. Mahama was doing, yes, he said he wanted to do, what did you say you wanted to do? What's it called? Building of infrastructure.
First. Okay.
Access.
Access.
Exactly, he used the word access. But Nana Addo,
the e-block and all of that.
Exactly.
Please, don't even talk about
that was
e-block.
about access.
Yes.
But Nana Addo's own was, let's just start, because somehow we have to start from somewhere, which I definitely agree. But starting from somewhere, you need to look into the question of what is the somewhere.
Yeah, but Annie, the data has come out. Haven't we seen the free SHS results? Haven't we seen it?
So this is wrong.
We juxtapose it with the results. What has been the result? What has been the result?
That there's been more enrollment.
No, the result is
but
that
we've had poor learning outcomes.
You see, what they were referring to is what we call, every student has to have a certain, I think they call it touch hours or something like that. I forgot
Contact hours.
Contact hours. So as you increase the number of students, then the contact hours have to increase. Government increased it by, I think, 1 hour or so. So it could very well be that there is a standard for contact hours that you have to meet. But ultimately, the results we've seen shows that the students who are coming out of free SHS have done better. The results have shown that we've done better. If you look at all the indication, from English to math to science, they've done better.
When the report says that we need to strengthen primary education resources,
we've always had to.
And then it says that better teacher teaching training,
of course,
and strong performance-based funding practices.
Because, Annie, in our education system, we have room for improvement. We've always had room for improvement.
No, but you see, Kofi, the point I want, especially when it comes to education, I'm so passionate about it. The point I want to make with education is that it's very dangerous to deprive the child of the basic, take note of the word basic needs of the child in school, food, resources in terms of furniture.
Everything they need.
Those things are not what you want to start first and get somewhere, because it's very important to miseducate a child. It's dangerous to miseducate a child.
What is more dangerous? And let them. What is more dangerous? First of all, I don't think we've miseducated the children. The issue isn't miseducation.
Is what?
You can argue for they made the argument of, what's the word, the performance, poor performance. Poor performance is not the same as miseducation. Miseducation is saying that 1 + 1 is 4. That's my understanding of miseducation.
Poor performance is saying what?
Poor performance is looking at the test scores, looking at the quality of education you are providing, whether the literature, the literacy level, arithmetic level. Can the students do basic arithmetic? Can the students do or read basic
critical
things
thinking
at a certain age? Critical thinking comes at a certain age. I don't know if at a free SHS level, maybe
critical thinking starts at basic.
Okay, fair enough.
It starts at basic.
No, but you see, when we look at education, quality of education, they use certain things, arithmetic and basic reading at certain age. So a student who is a class 6 student needs to be able to read at a certain level or needs to be able to do certain basic calculations. That is trying to understand the performance. That's not the same as miseducation. But nevertheless, Annie, the point you are making is that we have to review the free SHS. Is that not so? We have to look at where the loopholes are. We have to look at the expenditures we've made and see that if we've had value for money. And I'm saying I fully agree with you. It is important that we review some of the policies, planting for food and jobs, free SHS, 1 district, 1 factory, all these things. It's important that we review them. And if there are instances where we have to even curtail the policy, why not? Why not? Ultimately, what we want is the best for Ghana. So we are all for reviewing free SHS. We are all for reviewing all government policies. But most importantly, what are areas that we have to plug the loopholes?
But you are supposed to tell us that. What are the priorities?
Priorities as far as...
Because that's what...
but the government has agreed with the IMF. When you look at the document, the government has agreed with the IMF on all the areas they are going to.
Yes, but I'm saying
discuss.
That's what Prof was talking about. Kwame Penim said that don't touch free SHS, which I said in the morning that people misunderstood him when he said don't touch free SHS.
Okay.
They thought he was trying to say that, why do you want to review? Don't review, leave us and let's go to school for free. But he wanted to point out the area of priority.
Okay.
That if we're looking at discretionary expenditure, let's look at the low-hanging fruits that we think that we can do away with. Stop giving the ministers. They are not. Stop driving in luxurious vehicles. Stop using taking free fuel coupons, because all of that puts pressure on the government. No, but those are the things we can do away with.
And those things are important. I agree with you. But let me put my words very carefully. Those things that you mentioned are very important for the optics. Do you know why?
For the optics.
For the optics. Okay. Because they don't even scratch the surface. There are areas. Because when you quantify these expenditure you are looking at, they don't even come up to 1%. So my point is, yes, we have to do those things.
Do you know that free SHS is 4% of GDP?
No. I'm talking about, you cited some of the expenditure, luxurious expenditure, which you term luxurious. And I'm saying the cars and all of that. I'm saying that these things, when you quantify them, they amount to nothing, next to nothing. But there are areas of genuine gaps.
Like free SHS?
No, I'm not saying free SHS is wasting money. Free SHS isn't wasting money. But there are loopholes in our system. If you read the report talks about all of them.
Corruption.
I am saying corruption is an example. Value for money is an example where someone purchases something at a certain value, but it should have been at a lower value. These are where the real meat is. So we need to target those places and plug them.
Okay.
In addition to some of the suggestions that you've also made.
Okay.
But if we look at those places only, we miss the point.
Okay. Yeah. Victor, I think you will have the last word.
Yes. I mean, once my brothers agree that there's some corruption in the system.
Corruption has always been around.
Yes. And so once he has admitted that there's corruption, that there should be that fight against corruption, I mean, I will not speak much, but just to say that if you look at the report that you read, he agreed with the enrollment part and then sought to give interpretation to the other aspect of the report. The report is clear that yes, the free SHS has brought about increase in enrollment, but poor learning outcome. This is so clear.
For me, it defeats the whole purpose.
Yes.
Well, you can't be enrolling and then you are coming out with poor learning outcome.
There was the essence.
It's a quality against
and it's the same thing we said from the beginning. Let's do it progressively. In fact, I'm happy that they even clarify what the finance minister said. Look, some headmistresses, some headmasters were suspended because they allowed PTA to help.
But when it comes to you as the NDC, people have also criticized that you are doing too much of criticisms. I mean, we are in the media. We should point out all these areas, loopholes to them, for them to respond to. But you should also be coming up with solutions that we think that even we can try and implement them now.
And they've come up with solutions.
Have you seen some of the solutions?
Even before you point out the solutions.
Mama said they are going to do piggery. Why you didn't know?
Come on. Even before you say this, before you say all of this, when we mention review, they came out with their own meaning of review. They said review means collapse.
Okay.
You remember?
Yeah.
Today, he said that they are even going to review one district, one factory. Some project that have not even started, they said they will review. One village, one dam. Have you started that one? Of course. So you realize that now they are coming home. We said review. They said, they said NDC review means
review.
So now we have types of review.
Yours was diabolic review.
MPP. You see, these are the kind of government we are dealing with for people who are ready to sell our stake in the Jubilee food. 50%. They are selling our interest.
Nobody's selling anything.
Petro South Africa.
It has been saved. It has been salvaged.
No, but that should tell you.
You just thanked the energy minister.
That should tell you what their former national chairman was about doing.
Why are you doing this propaganda?
You understand? Former national chairman.
Why are you telling this? Why are you telling this?
You seem to be very interested in that issue.
You see, because I've been in the energy sector for some time.
Okay,
I've been in the energy sector for a while.
Right.
You see, I'm happy he has educated. You said $2 million for a kilometer of road.
Yeah, that's fact. Yeah.
That is why you don't just jump because there's a by-election. You don't just jump and say you are doing roads for votes. Now, after the election, you stop.
Yeah, the NDC does same. The
NDC
does same.
We can have a national conversation.
When there is a by-election and the NDC is in power, they do the same.
We can have a national conversation on how
now you know national conversation
should be managed. As to speak now, they are sending contractors to Asinov. You see, this piecemeal system of managing the economy.
We have contractors going to
Asinov road is already done.
Look.
To ascend, what's it? Whatever.
The president.
So we're not going to have road construction.
No, it's already
what are we going to have? Rice?
They shared rice. Come on. We saw the videos.
They shared rice.
Saw the videos. Look.
And 40 cities.
Okay.
300,000 people. You there?
You see?
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
Ghanaians have the facts. You see? And as we speak now, 88 of the majority MPs are calling for the dismissal of the finance minister because of the
Wonder Victor Kuto is a lawyer and he's a member of the NDC legal team, a national executive committee member as well. And Kofi Tonto is also a member of the NPP communications team. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Let's see how we try to go through the situation with the president as he's calling for our help. Good afternoon, Ghana.